The complete adaptation of Sir Arthur Conan Doyle's The Lost World is available on BBC Video and DVD. Because of our change of programme, this is how the rest of the night shapes up here on BBC One. After there's only one Manchester United, the first of our films, The Substitute 2, is now at 11:35, followed by Western action with Sean Connery and Brigitte Bardot in Shalako at 1 o'clock.
Love knows no limits.
My son only ever gets into trouble when he's with you. You stay away from him. It's finished.
Let's get married.
Until the boundaries are set.
You're not good enough for their snotty little brat.
She's part of me. I can't breathe without her.
You can't actually physically stop them seeing one another.
Yes, I can.
I can stand anything as long as I've got you.
BBC One presents an all-star cast.
You coward!
A classic love story set in a modern world.
Carol!
Sparkhouse, next Sunday at 9 on BBC One. Some things in life are indestructible.
The government's record on the environment is attacked as deplorable by one of its own advisers. It comes on the day the World Summit opens officially in South Africa. Police find items of clothing they believe Holly and Jessica were wearing when they disappeared. The investigation continues into the latest Legionnaires outbreak as one man dies. And at Headingley, Hussein leads England's fight for survival.
That's a biggie.
Good evening. One of the government's chief advisers on the environment has attacked the Prime Minister's record on green issues, calling it deplorable and lacking quality leadership. Jonathan Porritt says Labour also has a bizarre and naive adulation of big business. The Environment Secretary Margaret Beckett has admitted that the government could do more on green issues. The attack comes as the World Summit on Sustainable Development opens in Johannesburg. Raggy Omar is there.
Well, the summit has now opened, and it is the largest gathering of world leaders and possibly the most important such gathering of world leaders for over a decade. And tomorrow the really hard negotiations begin. But already some of the really divisive issues that are going to mark this conference are already becoming apparent.
The World Summit has finally been launched. The colourful and spectacular opening ceremony was watched by some of the 50,000 delegates expected to attend. But even here, there was a taste of some of the serious and contentious issues which are going to have to be tackled. The task ahead is huge: to find agreement on how the world's ever-increasing population lives a better life without destroying the Earth's precious resources for future generations. Among the key issues will be providing more of the world's poor with water, developing and using more sources of cleaner energy, giving improved access to healthcare, and protecting the world's environment. It is a huge agenda. But Jonathan Porritt, a leading government advisor, has said Tony Blair is too close to big business and should show more leadership on environmental issues.
And what I'm worried about with government is that it isn't really shaping the conditions for business to make the positive contribution it's capable of. It is naive about business on sustainable development, and it just needs to think much more carefully about how to encourage best practice and eliminate worst practice.
The Environment Secretary, who's heading the British delegation, discounted these comments.
What Jonathan has said is a mixture. It's his job too to keep pressure on the government and to give us incentives to move forward. But he's also said that in many ways the government has got quite a good record, especially compared to other governments. But obviously he wants to see us do more, and so do we.
This difference of opinion may be confined to the British delegation, but it's an indication of the huge gaps between the positions of Western governments and the rest of the developing world.
Tony Blair and the rest of the world leaders will arrive here in about 7 days' time, and their aim is to come up with a final declaration that will be binding on all governments here. But nobody pretends that the scope of the agenda and some of the critical issues will prove to be very difficult to negotiate in order to come up with that final agreement. Sophie?
They've certainly got a lot of problems, a lot of nitty-gritty issues to sort out before the world leaders arrive. Are they optimistic they can do it?
They are optimistic, Sophie, but I think that one of the key things is going to be how the divisions between Western governments like Britain, like the United States, is going to be agreed upon with the developing world, because there is a large amount of difference between the two sides. And of course, there are the charities and the pressure groups that want really concerted action over a whole range of issues, and bridging those gaps is going to prove to be very difficult, I think.
And what people will be wondering is what this summit can really achieve, what practical difference it can make to people's lives.
I don't think really anyone should really be holding their breath to see key practical changes in the first year after this conference. I think what it is going to do is going to provide a roadmap and a set of aspirations which governments around the world and pressure groups can follow. But I don't think it's going to be any legally binding document that's going to have real repercussions for governments if they don't live up to these pledges.
Raghi Omar, thank you very much. Cambridgeshire police have confirmed they've found items of clothing believed to have been worn by Jessica Chapman and Holly Wells when they went missing, but they have not revealed where or when they were discovered. Meanwhile, the vicar of Soham, where the girls lived, has thanked the public for their support and sympathy, but appealed for visitors to leave the town to grieve in peace.
At St Andrew's Church in Soham, the people of the town again gathered for Sunday service, still the focus of the nation's outpouring of sympathy. But while they welcome such support, it's now almost overwhelming. Coach parties, to the dismay of some, are even taking detours to visit the church and its sea of flowers. The media withdrew a week ago and now only send cameras back by invitation. Soham's vicar hopes the wider public will also now leave the town to grieve in peace.
The people of Soham need to be able to move forward. And with all the visitors that we are having, it's very difficult to do that. We are very grateful for the support that we've received throughout the country, but it's time for us to have some time and space now to be alone and to heal and to grieve in private.
The girls' head teacher, Jeff Fisher, has also said, although Soham will never forget the events of the last 3 weeks, we must now all pull together and start rebuilding our lives and the lives of those around us. But nobody will ever forget Holly and Jessica, and there will always be a place in our hearts for them. Cambridgeshire police have now confirmed that certain items of clothing believed to have been worn by the 10-year-olds when they went missing have been found. They were unable to say, though, when or where they were discovered. Detectives made the statement in response to a newspaper report that the Manchester United shirts said to belong to the girls had been recovered by officers. In Birmingham, meanwhile, church leaders are tonight appealing to a thief who stole one of 5 condolence books from the city's cathedral. Destined for Holly and Jessica's families, it's hoped it'll be returned soon. Clarence Mitchell, BBC News.
The Attorney General has been asked to consider whether some media coverage of the murders of Holly and Jessica is in contempt of court. There are concerns that the massive publicity since the arrests of Ian Huntley and Maxine Carr may make it difficult to hold a fair trial.
The Soham murders generated huge press and broadcast news interest. They created a wave of public sympathy, and there were few other stories around. Normally, after arrests, editors stop publishing details for good legal reasons, but last week they didn't.
What they're attempting to do by presenting this couple in as negative a light as possible is to convict them even before a trial. And I would say that they have acted reprehensibly over this case.
The Crown Prosecution Service has sent a file of newspaper articles to the Attorney General for him to consider if any amount to contempt of court. The police are worried that a judge might rule that the extent and nature of the coverage makes a fair trial impossible. On Friday, the Attorney General's office sent a letter to all editors, warning that the continuing torrent of publicity may prejudice a future trial. But this morning, almost every Sunday newspaper was still carrying the story on the front page. In the letter, the Attorney General reminds editors to consider carefully the conduct of journalists to ensure nothing is done which could impede the investigation or the administration of justice.
The time is undoubtedly going to come if certain elements of the press keep pushing against the edge of the law, when a judge in a notorious and sensational case is going to say, I am sorry, because of the pre-trial publicity, this man frankly cannot get a fair trial, and I'm going to stop this prosecution as an abuse of the process of a court.
Of course, not all coverage of events at Soham will necessarily put a trial at risk, and tomorrow the murders will still be on the front pages of several newspapers. Daniel Sandford, BBC News.
Meanwhile, police are tonight investigating the kidnap and sexual assault of two 14-year-old girls in Slough in Berkshire. They were forced into a white van by two men this afternoon. They were later released and alerted the police. A 2-year-old boy has died and his grandfather is missing after a boating accident in Argyll. They were sailing on Loch Orr when members of the public heard cries for help and saw them in the water. The boy was pulled from the loch by another boat but died later in hospital. A man in his 50s who contracted Legionnaire's disease in the West Midlands has died. He was one of 7 people to have been diagnosed with the disease in this latest outbreak. The other 6 are said to be making good progress. An investigation into the source is continuing.
On the road to recovery. This evening, for the first time since falling ill, Margaret Willits was able to leave the hospital grounds for a stroll with her family. She'll be discharged next week after the trauma of contracting a disease she'd never even heard of.
I just didn't know where I was, delirious. I just couldn't tell you where I was or what was happening to me. I can't think how I could have got it. Can't think where I'd gone or anything to say where I would have got it from.
Just where Mrs. Willits did catch it is what public health workers are trying to find out. She lives near this chemical factory. 2 workers here have also contracted the disease. But investigators say as yet they found no link with the plant, and it's just one of a number of sites being examined.
We are interested in a number of sites, maybe around 6 or 7, and we are taking steps on those sites now to first of all make sure they're safe and to see that they get the right treatment if they haven't had it already.
Tonight, health officials appear cautiously optimistic that the worst of this outbreak may be over. But they know that until its source is found and dealt with, it'll be difficult to reassure the local community. John Brain, BBC News, Sandwell General Hospital.
The TUC has warned that too many of us are heading for retirement without a proper income. It says 12 million workers don't have occupational pensions and will have to rely on the state. Part-time women working in unskilled jobs are among the worst off. The TUC wants employer contributions to be made compulsory. People who love haggis may have to live without it. The Food Standards Agency has asked the European Commission to ban the dish because it could theoretically be infected with BSE. Haggis lovers say it's ludicrous. Nearly 500,000 people have attended London's Notting Hill Carnival, Europe's biggest street party. The police say it's been relatively trouble-free with just a handful of arrests. The biggest crowd of up to 1 million is expected tomorrow. Afghanistan has become an unlikely holiday destination for a group of British tourists. They've arrived in the capital, Kabul, for a week of sightseeing. The trip, organised by a British travel firm, defies Foreign Office advice not to visit the country. Kylie Morris reports.
It's a beautiful view, isn't it? It's a lovely view.
A London barrister on holiday. Peter Gray may look like any other tourist, but he's on a tour that's far from typical. He has a penchant for destinations with a difference. Last year Iraq, and this year Afghanistan. He admits it's not for everyone.
It would be untruthful to say that it's not a bit of an adventure. Of course it's an adventure. Even if there hadn't been a war, it would be an adventure to come to Afghanistan. The fact that there has been, of course, makes it more so. But that's not the prime reason for being here.
Peter and his fellow travellers have ignored Foreign Office advice in favour of seeing firsthand what's happened to Afghanistan.
Even I thought it was mad before I came out, but once you're here you think, well, it's not such a crazy idea. You're just seeing what life's actually like here, getting a small sample of what it's like.
Did people say that to you before you left?
Yeah, they were barking mad, yeah.
Tourist attractions here are, not unlike the rest of the country, in need of a bit of work. But it's the chance to witness Afghanistan repair itself that's bringing people here. There is a kind of calm these days in the streets of Kabul, but it's far from lounging poolside. Tourists like these are a rare sight and a bit of a local attraction in themselves. But the war-weary locals seemed happy enough to welcome outsiders, armed only with their curiosity. Kylie Morris, BBC News, Kabul.
Rangers have moved into second place behind Celtic in the Scottish Premier League after a 2-0 win against Aberdeen at Ibrox. The first goal came on the half hour when Peter Löwenkrantz supplied the cross for Ronald de Boer to score from close range. Barry Ferguson added a late second with a penalty. Cricket, and captain Nasser Hussain led the fight back as England sought to save the third test against India at Headingley. They were forced to bat again after being dismissed for 273 in their first innings. At the close of play, Hussain was unbeaten on 90 and England were 239 for 4.
Despite it being a bank holiday weekend, the weather seemed unlikely to come to England's rescue. Avoiding the follow-on looked impossible, and although Hoggart seemed unlucky, the resistance lasted less than 15 minutes. 355 runs behind, England were keen for any sort of support. But their troubles deepened when Michael Vaughan's run of good form was ended by a jubilant Agarkar. England's middle order weren't the only endangered species in the ground. In a nervy morning, it took a rig on action and the odd slice of luck to reach lunch without any further damage. But Anil Kumble is a patient man, and it wasn't long before he trapped Robert Key leg before. The situation required a captain's innings, and Nasser Hussain quickly took up the challenge. However, Mark Butcher seemed to try to force the pace too much and gave Bangar his first wicket of the match. Hussain carried on his assault on the Indian bowling almost single-handedly.
That's a biggie.
John Crawley didn't hang around for too long. The look on his captain's face said it all. But, helped by Alex Stewart, he quickly raised spirits with a gutsy half-century, which dashed India's hopes of a day off tomorrow. As England still need 116 to make them bat again, their fans remain confident. But the old guard have at least made it a contest. Nigel Adderley, BBC News.
Let's find out what the weather has in store now from Sarah Wilmshurst. Sarah.
Sophie, thanks. Of course, tomorrow a bank holiday for many of us, and it looks like it is going to be mainly dry. Having said that, there'll be a lot of cloud. The best of the sun will be in the west, and the outlook for the rest of the week, well, it's for a lot of dry weather, warm spells of sunshine, but some rain in the north. Now, we've been watching the cloud massing in the Atlantic in the last 24 hours. It's now moving in across parts of the Western Isles of Scotland, some patchy rain here in the next 24 hours. We're also watching this swirl of cloud here in the North Sea. Now, that's going to slip southwestwards through tonight, bringing more in the way of clouds, some patchy rain into some central and eastern parts of England. Now, towards the west, there'll be clear spells and temperatures will drop as low as 10 degrees in Belfast and maybe down to a chilly 7 towards Aviemore. So the best of the sunshine tomorrow will be in western areas. Wales, for example, seeing spells of sunshine, particularly in western areas. They'll also be dry with spells of sunshine for Northern Ireland and for much of Scotland, away from that damp part of the northwest. But as we head south, it looks like east of the Pennines it's going to be quite cloudy, and there's always a risk of 1 or 2 drops of rain. And there's also going to be a lot of cloud, just a chance of 1 or 2 drops of rain across many central and eastern areas of England through the day. Perhaps just a chance that very late on we could see 1 or 2 showers cropping up towards Kent. Now, towards the east, it is going to feel quite chilly. We're going to have that brisk northerly wind blowing, a temperature of just 18 or 19 under the cloud. But towards the west, where we see lighter winds, more sunshine, it should feel quite pleasant with a temperature of 21. Now, for Tuesday, any showery rain in the southeast will clear away. Many places will be dry with spells of sunshine, but with some cloud and patchy rain drifting down across Scotland and Northern Ireland. Sophie.
Sarah, thank you very much. And that is the latest. There will be news throughout the night over on News 24. But from us, good night.
Earlier than in some listings, action drama The Substitute 2 is now on BBC One at 11:35. First, celebrating a century. Players past and present, including George Best, before his recent operation, recall why there's only one Manchester United.